Advanced Residential Applications and Case Studies. Chapter 11. Case Study of Encumbered Ownership Interest. Page 3. Where does value come from? Still don't see what the big deal is. Well, let's think about where value comes from. From your earlier studies, you should recall that there are 4 elements that create value. Those elements are demand, utility, scarcity, and transferability. And the handy-dandy way to remember these 4 elements is the acronym DUST. Let's briefly review these elements and how they create value. For the purpose of illustration, let's decide that we want to make some money, and time and history have shown that one of the best ways to make money is by selling something. We sit down and put our heads together and decide that we are going to make our fortune by selling bottled air. How well is this plan likely to work out? Well, in terms of demand, we have picked an ideal product. After all, everyone needs and wants air all day long, every day, so demand should be great. This business plan is looking good so far. What about transferability? Can I acquire, own some quantity of air and legally transfer the ownership rights to someone else? Yes, I can. I can scoop up some air in my containers and hold on to it because it's mine. I can sell it too because it is mine. 2 out of 2. Looks like we might be able to make some money here. Next, let's think about utility. This air we want to sell, does it serve some useful purpose? You know it does. Everyone on the face of the planet is our potential customer, because our air will be useful to all of them. I'm getting pretty fired up about this partnership of ours. Okay, we've covered demand, transferability, and utility. What's left? Oh, yes. Scarcity. I think we may have a problem with our business plan. The problem is that in spite of our product idea getting high marks in demand, utility, and transferability, it is a big loser when it comes to scarcity because air is everywhere, or just about everywhere. So even though we have a winner of a product in 3 of the 4 value creation categories, we actually have a worthless product idea given the utter lack of scarcity. Why would anyone in their right mind pay us for our handy bottled air when all they have to do is take a deep breath and get loads of it for free? Maybe we could sell our bottled air to scuba divers 150 feet down who just drained their air tanks, or to unfortunate souls in a cave-in. But apart from a few particular and scary markets, I think our great idea just fell apart. So you see by this illustration that in order for something to have value, each of the 4 elements that creates value must be present to some degree. And to the extent that the item has these elements in greater measure, then the more value that item will have. So Back to the contention that real estate and real property have different meanings, at least in terms of appraisal theory. We said earlier that you are not training to be a real estate appraiser, but rather you are training to be a real property appraiser. The point is that when you perform an appraisal, you really are not forming an opinion of the value of the real estate itself. Instead, you are forming an opinion of the value of the ownership rights of the real estate, which includes the element of transferability, of course, the transfer of title from seller to buyer. Let's consider an illustration that should make clear the difference between the two concepts. By the way, the following scenario is not your case study. That follows shortly. It is based on a situation similar to this example. End of page. Page 4. Property rights illustration. Let's suppose that you are in the market for a nice residential property outside of town where you and your family and your horses can live and play. About 5 acres should be sufficient, with fencing and a barn with stables. Oh, and a house too. You might be willing to live in the barn, but the rest of the family expects more. 4 bedrooms and a couple of baths would be just perfect, and a single-story ranch design preferably. A swimming pool and tennis court would be nice, and perhaps a stocked pond for fishing. You research the market and find that in your area, such properties are available, but they are not plentiful. Having shopped for several weeks, you have an idea that when you find just what you are looking for, you will probably be looking at a price tag of $500,000 or so. One day you happen to drive by a nice looking place with a for sale by owner sign posted at the road. On an impulse, you pull in and drive down a long winding paved driveway towards a fine looking single-story ranch style home. On either side of the drive are fenced pastures and some beautiful quarter horses are grazing. As you pull up in front of the dwelling, you notice a barn and stable behind the home. Before you knock on the door, you peek around the side of the home, and just as you were hoping, you spot a tennis court, a pool, and even a full-size basketball court. This is looking great. A knock at the door brings the owner out, and he is perfectly happy for you to drive up and drop in unannounced. Would you like to look around? Why, yes, you would. After a complete tour, you are certain that this is exactly the place you have been looking for. In fact, it is even better than what you had hoped for. Did I mention there are actually 8 acres, and you would be happy with 5? So you ask, how much? Well, I'm asking $300,000 for the place, the owner replies. You cannot believe what you just heard. You expected that anything meeting your requirements would cost at least $500,000. And this is nicer in every way. Yet, he just said his asking price is hundreds of thousands below what you know this place must be worth. You tell him that you are very much interested in purchasing the property, if that is his true asking price. He assures you that he is willing to sell for $300,000. Oh, there is one thing you should know. I do own the place, but I don't really own it the way that most people own their homes. You now have a sinking feeling that this was, in fact, too good to be true. Please explain, you say. Well, I have what is called a life estate in the property. To be more specific, I have a per Autry v. life estate. That is to say, a life estate based on the life of another. You see, my rights to the property exist only so long as my Aunt Sally lives. As long as Aunt Sally lives, the place is basically mine. I mean, I can live here, I can mortgage it, I can even sell my estate. So, you see, it's mine as far as I'm concerned, and I can legally sell you my estate in the property. Now, when Aunt Sally dies, my cousin Jimmy, he actually gets title to the property. I'm not really sure when Aunt Sally has it set up like this, but hey, that's her business. In the meantime, like I said, it's mine, so to speak. So, do you want to sit down and work out a purchase contract? Well, I don't know. This Aunt Sally. What can you tell me about her? Oh, Aunt Sally. She is a great lady. Poor thing. She's really struggling now. I hate to see her going down so fast. Her health, you know. She smoked 4 packs of cigarettes every day of her life since she was 16. And they've taken their toll. I mean, she's 89 years old now. I need to go see her today because I honestly don't know how much longer she is going to be with us. She sure has been good to me, giving me a life estate in this property and all. What a great lady. So, any more questions, or shall we sit down and hammer out a purchase agreement? I'm ready to get this done today. How about you? Well, how about you? Does that $300,000 price tag for this lovely, perfect parcel of real estate still sound good to you? No? Why not? Just a few minutes ago, you were chomping at the bit to buy this wonderful place. And you would have been more than happy to pay the seller the full asking price. Nothing has changed about the real estate in the last few minutes, has it? The same 8 acres, the same ranch-style home, the same barn and stables, the same fencing, the same pool, tennis court, basketball court. Nothing at all has changed about the real estate. So, why all of a sudden do you have cold feet? True, nothing changed about the real estate. Nothing changed about the parcel of land and all of the improvements, but something else changed. At least in terms of your understanding. The nature of the real property changed drastically from what you assumed it to be. You assumed that the owner had fee simple absolute property rights. You assumed that he had the whole bundle of rights, that he owned the real estate the way most people own real estate. Now, well, everything is different. True, he has an estate in the property, and he really can mortgage or sell his estate in the property. But if you buy his life estate, what can you really expect to get for your money? What benefits will accrue to you by virtue of this life estate in exchange for the $300,000 you paid to the seller? Well, you will be able to enjoy all of the same rights that this fellow presently enjoys. You too may occupy and enjoy the land and improvements. You too may mortgage or sell or lease to your heart's desire until Aunt Sally dies. That is, and then look out, because here comes Cousin Jimmy to claim his rightful title to the property. I wonder if that will be this week or next. So do you see the difference between real estate and real property? And more importantly, can you see how value is ultimately tied to real property rather than real estate? You recall our discussion of the elements of value. The issue of transferability is relevant here, isn't it? Certainly the life estate ownership rights can be transferred, but the nature of the rights actually being transferred is what seriously impacts the value here. The real estate is still picture perfect. It is wonderful. The real property, the interests, benefits, and rights inherent in the ownership of real estate, however, well, that's not looking too good to you, is it now? Unless you have some miracle cure for whatever ails Aunt Sally, you are probably making your way down the driveway and thinking, I knew it was too good to be true. Oh, by the way, if it weren't for Aunt Sally's smoking/health issues, Social Security actuarial publications state that at age 89, Aunt Sally is probably good for about 4.5 more years, with the probability of death being 13.3%. But because of her health issues, all bets are off. Bottom line is this: value ultimately depends on the ownership rights, or lack thereof, that you acquire when you purchase an item. If you want to get a car for a really great price, buy one without a title. We are talking about a piece of paper now when we say title, which is different from the real estate concept, of course. You can and should get a car for a lot less than you would normally have to pay if you walk away from the transaction with no real legal proof that the car is actually yours. Good luck registering the vehicle. You want to buy a stereo for that car. There's a fellow back in the alley that sells them really cheap out of his van. However, his rights of ownership to those stereos, and yours too, are pretty questionable. So do you see why we truly are better identified as real property appraisers instead of real estate appraisers? Yes, the real estate is important, but the value ultimately is tied to the degree to which you truly own the real estate. End of page.